It was supposed to be just another camping trip, a chance for four friends to relax, have some fun, and disconnect from the world. But what started as a peaceful getaway quickly turned into a nightmare when they realized they weren't alone in the forest. And what's even more terrifying? They never left. Hello, I'm Erudai and welcome to Moonskull. If you're looking for tales of horror, the paranormal, sci-fi, or the unexplained, then you are in the right place. I know you 5,000 wonderful fear addicts, as well as the 30% of you closet horror buffs who have still not subscribed, are eager to get to the story I just mentioned. So, let's dive into James' terrifying experience. James had always been the adventurous type, and when his close friends, Travis, Ellie, and Rachel invited him for a camping trip in the rural woods in Michigan, he didn't hesitate. It was supposed to be a fun break from the grind, a chance to reconnect and enjoy nature, or so he thought. The drive out there was scenic, filled with the familiar banter of old friends and the excitement of a weekend getaway. As they arrived at the forest, James couldn't help but feel a shift in the air. The trees were denser than expected. The sunlight barely touched the forest floor, and they had trudged along the winding trail to their campsite. It's just a forest, James told himself, but even as they walked deeper, something felt off. The shadows were heavier here, the quiet thicker. The rustling of leaves was absent, and the air felt oppressive. Ellie, walking ahead, looked back with a grin, her blonde hair catching the faint light. "You okay, James? You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "Just taking it all in. This place is wilder than I thought," he told her, trying to shake the strange feeling that was creeping over him. As they continued up the trail, James tried to dismiss the unease that was riding in his chest. Travis and Rachel were up ahead, laughing, clearly enjoying the adventure. Travis, ever the showman, was wearing a ridiculous straw hat and oversized boots, trying to lighten the mood with his antics. But despite the distractions, something about the forest, the oppressive silence, the way the trees seemed to close in around them, kept him on edge. Now, they finally reached their campsite, a small clearing surrounded by towering pines, and Travis wasted no time setting up his luxury suite tent, joking about the extras that he had packed. Rachel and Ellie were chatting, trying to figure out their own tents, while James tried to shake the feeling that someone was watching them from just beyond the tree line. The fire was built, and as the evening settled, the group gathered around it. The warm glow of the flames was a stark contrast to the darkness that seemed to swallow the rest of the forest whole. Ellie leaned in, her face illuminated by the firelight, and she said, "All right, who's got a scary story?" Her voice was light, but had a teasing edge. She said, "It's not camping without one." Travis immediately jumped in with an exaggerated tale about a monster that was haunting the woods, a forest wraith, he called it, who could drag people into the shadows. It was the kind of story you'd expect from a jokester like Travis. It was clear the others were just humoring him. Rachel laughed, throwing a pine cone at him. James chuckled along with them, but deep down, his unease was growing. The shadows around the campfire felt deeper than they should have been. Even though Travis's story was ridiculous, something about the night made it feel more real. As the others retreated to their tents, James remained by the fire, just staring into the flames. His mind kept wandering to this feeling that something was out there, just beyond the light. The fire crackled, and as the warmth of the flames began to fade, James finally decided it was time to go get some sleep. But just as he started to stand, he saw it. A shadow. At first, he thought it was one of the others playing a prank, maybe Travis messing around, but as he squinted, he realized that something was horribly wrong. The figure was just too still, too unnatural. Its limbs were just unnervingly long, and it moved in jerks like a marionette with broken strings. James froze, his breath catching in his throat. The eyes. They were the worst part. They glowed faintly in the firelight, two dark pinpricks of light reflecting back at him. He wanted to call out, ask who it was, but his voice wouldn't come out. It was as if the figure was drawing him in or holding him captive with its gaze. The longer he stared, the more he felt a horrible sense of dread creeping over him. It didn't belong here. It wasn't human. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, the figure melted back into the darkness, disappearing like smoke. James stayed rooted to the spot, his heart pounding in his chest, unable to move. He couldn't rationalize what he had just seen. It wasn't a trick of the firelight, nor was it a shadow cast by the trees. It was real, and it had been watching him. He tried to tell himself that it was nothing, that it was just his mind playing tricks, or maybe the story from Travis's prank earlier had gotten to him, but the feeling of being watched just lingered even after the last embers of the fire had died down. So he crawled into his tent, shaking, but the darkness still felt heavy around him. Every creak of the tent fabric, every shift in the wind, felt like a reminder that the thing from the forest was still there, watching, waiting. Morning came, and with it, the relief of daylight. The others were already up, laughing over breakfast, but James couldn't shake the memory of the figure from the night before. He glanced at the trees, half expecting it to appear again, but there was nothing, just the peaceful quiet of the forest in the daylight. He didn't mention what he had seen to the others. How could he? They would just laugh it off, but deep down, he couldn't forget what had happened. As the day went on, the group decided to explore deeper into the woods. Travis wanted to show them a stream that he had found earlier, and though James didn't want to be the one to ruin the vibe, the unsettling feeling still hadn't left him. As they walked deeper into the forest, the trees were growing thicker, blocking out the sun, and the silence felt even more oppressive than it had the day before. That is when they found it. A pile of stones, stacked in a rough pile in the middle of the trail. At first glance, it seemed like some kids had left it there, but the stones were smeared with a dark, sticky substance that looked like blood. Ellie recoiled, and Rachel whispered, "What the hell is this?" Travis tried to shrug it off, said probably just a prank, but nobody believed that. The air was thick with tension, and even Travis's usual bravado seemed to be fading. James felt a chill creep back up his spine. He had had a feeling that whatever was out there, whatever had been watching him, was somehow connected to this. This wasn't just a prank. Something was wrong. The group quickly decided to head back, but as they walked, the forest seemed to close in on them. The trees, now gnarled and twisted, seemed to shift and sway as if they were somehow alive. The whispers started faintly, deep within the trees. At first, James thought it was just the wind, but the sound grew louder, clearer. It was like voices, low and guttural, whispering in a language he couldn't understand. And then, the growling started. Something that didn't belong in this world. The creature that James had seen last night wasn't just a figment of his imagination. It was real, and it was hunting them. Now, the group eventually made it back to camp. We know this because James's journal was eventually found, and he had described everything they'd experienced up to that moment, but it was the last entry in his journal. Nobody ever left those woods, or went back home to their families, or what have you. So it begs the question, what happened to James and his friends? What did they see? And there you have it, folks. A haunting tale of a seemingly fun camping trip that turned into a fight for survival. What do you think happened to James and his friends? Was it just a trick of the mind, or was the forest really alive with something darker? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you want more of this kind of wild, paranormal, real-life madness, make sure to smash that like button and hit subscribe, because we got plenty more where that came from. I'm Arudai, and until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and remember, sometimes the scariest things are the ones we can't explain.